Hi, Brian. How are you doing today?
Doing amazing. How are you, Joyce?
Good, good, thanks. So I understand from our previous conversation that your father was a victim of a scam and he did lose some money. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, years ago, it's been several years ago, we noticed he started declining with his memory. And at that time, he was married to my stepmom. And then she passed away recently this past September. And then, and his memory was already kind of on a steep decline. And then it kind of went a little deeper. And he was living by himself in his home, and he began getting lots and lots of phone calls of a lot of giveaways and prizes under the guise of,
Uh,
they're going to give him something for free.
right.
I recall being in his house. He's only 20 minutes away from me where he was living at the time. I remember being there and the phone just would not stop ringing, and every time he would pick it up
Wow.
and it would be one of those. And I kept telling him, Dad, if you don't recognize the number, don't pick it up. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, literally, as I say that, the phone rings. It's somebody he doesn't recognize. He picks it up anyway.
Mix it up. Yeah.
And so, you deal with these issues where they're in a mental state where they don't really, they're like a child in a way. And I don't mean that in a mean way. They just, I don't know. It's interesting. But anyway, one of these individuals got a hold of him and ended up befriending him to the point where my dad would do anything the guy asked, and he promised him money, a large sum of money, in exchange for money.
Okay.
And because he became his friend over the phone, they spent hours on the phone together daily. I found out
Wow.
later, and
Wow.
it got to the point where this person on the other end became more of a friend and a ally than his own family. When we would try to let him know, Dad, we think you're being scammed, he would get very upset and thought he was doing the best he could, that he was doing a business transaction and
Mm-hmm.
all these things. But anyway, yeah, he ended up turning on his family, which is myself and my brother, and literally any friend that would he would talk to on the phone. I ended up tailing him for an entire day one day, as he ran around from the bank to another store to get gift cards to the post office to mail off the cash. It was unbelievable.
Wow, that's awful. That is exactly a tactic that the scammers will use, the grooming tactic, and they'll all of a sudden become the victim's best friend and alienate them from the family. And it's unfortunate that your father fell victim to that. Um, what was it that um, I guess was the breaking point, the tipping point, whatever you want to call it, that where your father finally realized that he was being scammed?
Well, the scammer was doing it primarily through his cell phone, my dad's cell phone. That way, while he's driving around, the scammer's coaching him on, I mean, every step. I found
Wow.
notes that my dad had left behind that had one was a list of my to do list for the day from this guy. Uh, and the tipping point was so I knew that the bottom line was I had to find a way to get his phone shut off. If the guy can't get to him, so one day at his house, because he would hit him both through the landline and through the cell phone.
Oh, okay.
So ultimately, I finally unplugged and disabled his landline, and he was of the point of mind where he could not figure out how to reconnect it. So that was actually a good thing. And then I went. I luckily I had a power of attorney and a trust that had been formed by my dad and my mom, and then his subsequent wife updated it, which was a good thing. And ultimately, that empowered me to be able to go in and shut down his phone account.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, the moment he realized that that was over, it like something snapped in him, and he says, "Oh my gosh, I guess I was being scammed." And that was the first time he ever admitted it, and it woke him up.
Wow.
It was my brother said it. He said it was like they had him in a trance of some kind. And I'm like, wow, it sounds a lot like that. But that was the turning point. Was getting the communication line severed. From that point forward, was still a lot. They sent Joyce. They sent a taxi cab to come pick him up after the funds stopped coming.
Wow.
Not once, but twice to his home.
Wow.
The first time, both times, we have a phenomenal, or he has phenomenal neighbors.
Hmm.
This one neighbor happened to be home, well, often is home. And both times she confronted the taxi cab driver and said, "Why are you here? What are you doing here?" Well, the first time she came to pick him up to go shopping, my dad was literally out driving around shopping already. So we knew that
Oh,
was a
wow.
lie.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my neighbor did a great job and found out who ordered this cab, got the number, the name. It was the same guy,
Wow.
the same name and number that he had been talking to all these hours and days and weeks. And
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. And then they sent him a second time. So we were in fear for his life. Literally, we thought they were coming to pick him up and go take him out and get rid
Right.
of evidence, and anybody could say anything. And so, yeah, we put a lot of things in motion real quick. He was home alone. He was not fit to live at home, and got him diagnosed officially. They officially diagnosed him with dementia, advanced dementia.
Okay.
And by law, when a doctor or physician declares that, or gives that designation, they have to report it to the DMV. And as a result, the license is then suspended.
So, okay.
All these things that transpired were like in unbelievable, wonderful ways. It just, they fell into place. It was very trying, very difficult.
Right.
I've never been under so much stress in my entire life personally. Every day I'd get up to a new call and run and get up and have to bolt out of the house for something else. But
Wow.
crazy stuff.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So, um, you guys were able to stop it. It sounds like cutting off that line of communication was the turning
That was
point
it.
where and then your father realized that he was being scammed. Not going to get any money back that he had already lost, but it was a good thing because you're able to prevent any more money from being lost because it sounds like he probably would have given this person his whole life savings.
Yeah, he
Um,
was he was already halfway there, literally.
yeah.
It almost drained him.
Was
And
there, so you had mentioned that you had a power of attorney already in place.
yeah,
Um, so is that what you needed then in order to shut his phone off? And because I'm guessing it was in his name and they would
yes.
not have shut it off if you didn't have power of attorney.
That is correct. And even then, it took several more steps. I didn't just walk in and they said, okay, let's do it. I even had paperwork every time I went in. So yeah, it's very important to have that in case they are mentally unstable. And also, luckily, his bank account itself was designated a trust bank account, and I was on that trust. So was my brother. So that would be something else I would advise people to do is see if there's a way, have the person get a trust in place if they don't have one already, and then designate their bank account as a trust. So that way, in case something like this happens, you do this with love.
Right.
Say, look,
Right.
just in case something like this happens, at least you have somebody to help you. So thankfully that was in place, and my brother and I were able to take control of his finances for him, and so we can protect him. I mean, the scammers literally somehow got into his bank account, changed the phone number on file and the mailing address.
Oh, geez.
They also did this with his social security account. I don't know how they did all
Uh,
this. And this was during the pandemic when you could not visit the office. So
right.
they used verbal cues somehow to get in, the give the
Wow.
secret words or whatever. And they probably asked him, and he just doesn't flat out remember doing it, telling them.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so
Right.
yeah, I had to do a lot of damage control after the fact and get all these things, find ways to block people out of his accounts. We're still in
Wow.
the process. It's still not over. This started happening last March, and it's August now, so it's been what 6 months or so. And I mean, I'm literally taking care of all his finances. I'm looking at my desk full of everything. I spent the
Uh,
weekend, paying his bills and depositing refund checks from things. We sold his
right.
house so we could get him safe and got him out of there. And it's just been an unbelievable ordeal. But I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I get that it's a common thing, unfortunately. And I'll just say there is a very special place in hell for these people that do this to
Yeah.
very weak people.
Yeah.
One quick note: the banker, I
Sure.
got to know his banker very well. The branch manager, she's amazing, and she said it's very common that scammers will go after elderly who have just recently lost a spouse. They actually look at the
Yeah.
obituaries and target
Okay.
them. And so that's a
Yep.
good thing for everyone out there to keep in mind. Hey, if that just happened, or if they see that it might be happening, if things are going down, then start getting these things in order ASAP, and
Yes.
be ready.
Yeah. the whole reason that I started Rose was because a loved one was involved in a scam, and it was shortly after she lost her husband. And going through that grieving process and having someone to quasi take your spouse's place. They're not really taking their place, but in her mind,
Yeah.
they were taking the place. And yeah, you want to give them everything you have. And I know it was really hard for her immediate family to get everything in place to get it stopped. So what would you say would be the top three things for family members to think about? You already said the banker had some good advice. Was scammers watch the obituaries, and they specifically prey on the the spouses or partners that have just lost some loved one. Um, so what would be your three or four takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything you can do to actually prevent this from happening. So that's the unfortunate thing. The best thing you can do is be prepared if it happens. And I get that requires extra energy on everyone's part. It's kind of like an insurance policy that no one wants to deal with. I get that, but definitely get a trust. Make sure that they have a trust in place would be number one. And then if they're open to it, you know, take their current financial mean account and make it a trust account. Just go to your bank and they'll tell you what to do. You need to bring your trust with you. I wasn't there when they did this. They did this long before all this happened, thankfully. Um, that's two of the key things because the scammers are coming after their money. And if you have any way to jump in and help, like either seize those assets or actually open a different bank account and move the assets, whatever it takes, at least you'll have that power. That's the primary. Yeah, I would say that's it. That's the number one thing, and because you know you're gonna look at your parent or your loved one right now and think, well, they love me. This would never happen. They would never turn on me. I thought the same
Right,
thing,
right,
and then I thought, my gosh, who are you? What happened to you? And
right.
he would literally get. I mean, he barked at me in the bank the last time I talked to him before. I mean, that was like the straw that broke the camel's back when he got very verbally upset with me in the bank as I followed him and said, "Dad, what are you doing?" He was sitting down trying to extract another large sum of cash.
Wow.
And I yelled not yelled, but I said kind of loudly through the plexiglass to the teller, I said, "He's being scammed." And he got really upset with me and blew up.
Yeah.
And they stopped him from getting the cash that time. They couldn't prevent him forever because it's his
Right.
money.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the bank can't do it for you. You have to take control, and that was a big learning right there. Was they want to help you. Everybody does, and they can help stall things for a period. But when it all said and done, it all comes down to you, and you
Yeah.
have to take care of it. Detectives, we have so much evidence. Oh my gosh, I mean physical evidence and everything: phone numbers, locations where the money was sent, addresses, photographs of the residence where he sent the money in another state. And the detective has all this, but they've gone silent because they're too busy with higher priority cases. I'm not complaining. It's just where it is right now.
It's just right.
And it's all there. It's cataloged, but these people are still out there and they're scamming others. I'll guarantee it. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say the number one primary thing would be to get the ability to access your loved one's accounts in the event that becomes necessary.
Got it. And then the power of attorney is
That's part of it. Yeah.
yeah, another great tool to be able to have that in place before your loved one gets diagnosed with something that affects their cognitive and mental capabilities.
And so
Um,
that's a good point. There are two flavors of power of attorney. It's financial and medical. Get both.
okay.
Because when dementia, or if this is what's going on with a loved one, if it's a mental thing, then that gives you the power to make the decisions that are right for them. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've accompanied him now to doctor's visits because he just can't formulate the words or logically respond to the doctor. And I think I know his health record better than he does now. But it also gives you the ability to get his prescriptions or her prescriptions,
Right.
to handle their medications. I mean, I was literally just trying to call him about 7 times right before this call. Sometimes he just doesn't pick up his phone. I'm reminding him he has an appointment in now 20 minutes from now, and he needs to get a ride to get there. And it's just
Yeah.
nonstop. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, be prepared. Get their finances protected, and then after that, it's a whirlwind. I hope it doesn't happen to anyone listening to this, but if
Right.
it does, I hope this helps them some way.
Right. Well, Brian, I really thank you for sharing your story. Rose's big mission is to educate not only the senior population, but everybody about what goes on with the scams and their techniques and their tactics, and then how to better protect yourself. So this is really going to help. I really think this is going to help drive it home to people that this doesn't just happen to someone else. You hear about these things, they talk about them on the news, and I think a lot of people's subconscious goes to, oh, well, that'll never happen to my family. And it's like, no, it can happen to you. You could fall for a scam. And so I think it's good to share these stories to help other people realize that this is here. It's been here for a long time. It's only getting worse, and we really need to do what we need to do to protect ourselves and our families. Um,
Yeah,
so I thank you very much for sharing your story.
very welcome, Joyce. Thank you for doing what you do.